Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 orientation to the Higher Ed Information Security and Privacy panel. We'll get started in just a minute or two while everyone is joining. We've got a couple slides for you to share, for us to share some information about activities that are going on in the community. Everyone, welcome to the 2021 orientation for Higher Ed Information Security and Privacy Community panel. We'll get started in just a moment. We've still got people trickling in, and so we'll let them keep coming into the panel, and we'll get started in just a moment. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 orientation for Higher Ed Information Security and Privacy Community panel. We'll get started in just a minute. Hi, everyone. This is Nick Lewis from Internet 2. Welcome to the panel for today. Welcome to the Higher Ed Information Security and Privacy Community. We'll get started in just a minute as attendees finish coming into the room or into the panel or the virtual room. I've been preparing for my EDUCAUSE talk later in the month, so I'm thinking about things in person. So we'll get started in just a moment. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 2021 orientation for Higher Ed Information Security panel. My name is Nick Lewis from Internet 2. We'll get started now. A little on the agenda. We're going to start with a welcome and introductions. Then we'll go right into the panel. And I'm really excited to hear what our panelists have to share and the discussion with the community. And hopefully we'll save a little time at the end for your questions and answers. On the logistics for today, all participants' microphones and video are turned off. And please join the conversation and put your questions into the QA panel in Zoom. Today's virtual event is being recorded and will be made available on the past events portion of the Internet 2 I2 online page. And we'll start with introductions. We'll start with Brian.
Thanks, Nick. I am Brian Kelly. I'm the director of the cybersecurity program here at EDUCAUSE, and thanks for inviting me and letting me participate in this awesome panel this afternoon.
Thanks, Brian. Kim.
Hi, I'm Kim Milford, the executive director with the REN-ISAC. I work closely with Nick and Brian on a variety of subjects, and I'm really excited to hear what the panelists have to say and discuss these great ideas with them. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Kim. Now we'll introduce our panelists. Mike.
Hi, everyone. Mike Mays. I'm the Associate Director of Identity and Access Management here at the University of Delaware. I'm happy to be a part of this panel and talk with many other members of the higher ed security community.
Thanks, Mike. Ashley.
Hello all, my name is Ashley Valentine. I'm a senior cybersecurity engineer at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. Like a lot of you, I'm actually pretty new to the higher education space, so I'm hoping to impart some wisdom from when I first joined as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Ashley. Zarmina.
Thanks for having me. I am the Director of Cybersecurity Education at the National Cybersecurity Alliance, and we provide events, programming, and resources for everyone in the security and security awareness space. So that's why I'm here, because we also help the higher ed community. And I also started my security career at the George Washington University. So be happy to share some of my experiences with you guys. Thanks again.
Thanks, Zarmina. Cheryl.
Hi, I'm on the West Coast, so I'm going to say good morning. My name is Cheryl Washington. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for the University of California at Davis. And much like my co-panelists, I too am very happy and thrilled to be here.
Thanks, Cheryl. Now I'm going to stop sharing and then we'll get into the panel questions. So the first question that we're going to start off today is for Cheryl. We'll start with what community activities have you been involved with and what have you gotten from them?
Well, that's a great question. Let me set context. I've been in the cybersecurity space for probably more than 20 years now, so I'm an old hack at this. I have literally been involved in nearly every one of our major communities, I2, REN-ISAC, and of course, EDUCAUSE. Throughout my career, I've participated in a variety of different roles. Either I'm a member of a committee or I chair a committee or I teach. In fact, I had the fortunate experience of serving as a faculty member for EDUCAUSE's Leadership Institute. I do a lot of mentoring, particularly with young budding security officers or analysts or professionals who are entering into this space, particularly in higher education. Enjoy mentoring immensely. And currently I'm serving as a member of the board of directors for EDUCAUSE. So throughout 20 plus years, a host of different roles within our major communities. What have I gotten out of this? That is a fantastic question. In the early days of my career, all of these communities helped shape my thoughts, philosophy, and understanding about cybersecurity. Cyber is a challenging discipline. There's not a single answer book or playbook for how to be a good security officer. You need help. And you need a community. And these three communities that I just mentioned, they truly helped shape my thoughts and understanding about how to create security programs for the institutions that I've worked for throughout my career. I should mention that I've served as both a security officer at a campus or a university, and also as a system-wide security officers for two large systems. Each system had at least 10 campuses. So you can imagine that that field was quite diverse, quite complex, and quite challenging. And again, each of these communities have helped shape and form my thoughts, understanding, and basically philosophy and strategy for how to create and maintain security programs for the institutions I've supported. As I grew in my career, the other, I think, added advantage of being a member of these communities is building a network. I can't say it enough. This job is tough. If any of you are in the security space, and I'm sure most of you are, let me just give you one piece of advice. You can't do it by yourself. Joining these communities certainly helped me, and I know it helped others truly address some of the challenges that we face as security professionals. Then lastly, I would say, and it's really not last, but perhaps just to close the loop on what I've derived from my memberships, is this opportunity to now give back. Serving on panels like this, presenting at nearly every one of the conferences that each of these communities have presented or offer, has given me an opportunity to share what I've learned and exchange thoughts and ideas with others. So with that, I'll close.
Thanks, Cheryl. You've been great participant and engaged, and it's so great to hear about the things that you've been involved in. Ashley, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what you've been engaged in.
All right. I've been incredibly heavily involved in planning the yearly security conference, which has been rebranded into the EDUCAUSE Cybersecurity and Privacy Professionals Conference for the past few years. This was actually my first venture into the EDUCAUSE community and the higher education community as a whole, and definitely really allowed me to build up my network of security privacy professionals within the community. Also, I've been participating in both a peer mentoring option that was offered a few years back and the mentoring program that Brian so nicely shared in the chat that is still ongoing. I still talk at least monthly to each of my mentors. Echoing what Cheryl said, mentoring is incredibly beneficial. If you haven't already gotten a mentor or mentored someone, then I highly recommend it. It's been really helpful with the peer mentor to bounce ideas off each other, since we're both in about the same stage of our career, about similar problems we've been having. And also with the more traditional mentoring, it's been really helpful to have someone ask about different strategies he's used to get certain projects lifted off the ground, what he's found most successful. And then, of course, there are specific community groups such as the Young Professionals or the Security Listserv that's had a lot of pretty insightful discussions.
Thanks, Ashley. I can echo many of your comments around the discussions with the community and the listservs, that so much happens there around engaging and asking questions, because we rarely have these webinars or community events when many times you need that ask that question right away, and you want to get that feedback right away. So ask the same question to Mike. What are some of the community activities you've been involved with?
Sure. So I'm a little newer to getting involved with the community, and coming in from the identity and access management perspective. I found myself latching on to Internet 2 and In Common, and working with their groups that they have. They have a lot of software working groups around some of the products that they offer. And then along with that, they actually have Slack channels, and a lot of members of the community are on there. They're always willing to help and respond, sometimes all hours of the day. And then a lot of the EDUCAUSE listservs that have been mentioned before, I'll sometimes see, I'm a member of the IM listserv and the security, and you'll see a lot of the same questions kind of pop up on either one. So I found being part of that to be very useful, seeing some of the questions and answers that go back and forth. And then University of Delaware recently completed an engagement with the Collaboration Success Program, which is a program that In Common runs, that a school can become a member of, and you work with other schools working with trying to solve similar issues in the identity management space. And along with that, other schools that have done it before come back, and they will host lectures and offer assistance. And then there's another Slack channel that deals with more hands-on specific help once you're part of the program. So all that's been very useful for us.
Thanks, Mike. And now I'll ask the same question to Zarmina.
So I've been involved in some of the same things that have been mentioned, Slack channels, community groups, working groups. I've been a conference speaker, and I started off as a conference attendee before I did all of those things. And it was a very welcoming space. And I think that what you get out of it is often what you put in. What you get out of it is often qualitative. So it's not necessarily something that can be measured in the traditional sense, but I would say that you, as Ashley and others mentioned, you can find mentors, you can find community, you can, it's just a space that like any other community, will help you validate what you're doing. So I think that's at the crux of everything we're talking about. So.
And on that validation, sometimes that validation feels really good. In the preparation for this panel, one of the comments I think, Brian, you may have made, it's also like it's group therapy sometimes, some of the community engagement, because we're all going through many of the same things and we can help each other work through those.
Yeah, Nick, that's one of my favorite sayings, but I think some of our panelists have already said it, right? Is that we're not in this alone, right? This is a team sport and we need this community, and that's that the support group is probably a better reference model than group therapy, but maybe it's accurate. So I have the next question, and I think the first one we focused on sort of the give and take that our panelists had individually, but this is really about, you know, your campus has gotten from your engagement in the community. So sort of says Armina's point around, you know, it's qualitative, but I think we start with Mike on this one to talk a little bit about what you've brought back to the University of Delaware from these communities.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been very, I guess I want to say eye-opening for some of the things we're able to bring back. I would say very early on in my career, I think a lot of us get into IT and IT security looking at, you know, we want to solve problems and fix issues and kind of be the hero. And you sometimes, when you're early in your career, you might get a little stuck on kind of being in your bubble, focusing on what specifically is happening to you or at your university. And then as you kind of learn about these communities and start engaging, the whole world kind of opens up and you realize that everyone's dealing with the same problems, everyone's having the same issues, everyone's trying to solve very similar things. And either they've done it already or they're in the process of doing it. So just being able to reach out and make contacts with other universities. We've been able to set up meetings, and we found a lot of good contacts from other schools that run similar databases, similar ERP systems, are running similar security models that we can kind of go back and forth, have those conversations, run some ideas past them, they'll run some ideas past us, and then we can collaborate and share. And just being able to bring that back to University of Delaware and kind of open up that idea of sharing with other universities and having those types of contacts, it's definitely invaluable for us.
Yeah, thanks. And Mike, those are all sort of the core concepts we talk about at EDUCAUSE of learn, plan, do, and share, right? And that's sort of the life cycle of what we get from these communities. So I'm going to jump over to Ashley now. And before I do that, I'm going to point out that she's not just heavily involved with the Cybersecurity and Privacy Professionals Conference. She is the chair for the 2022 conference, which we plan to have in Baltimore, Maryland, May 3rd through the 5th, hopefully in person. And no pressure, over to you.
Thanks. I thought I'd mentioned it, but I guess not. But yeah, shameless plug, definitely register for the conference next year. It should be a lot of fun. As far as what the campus has gotten from our engagement, just echoing some of the themes that Mike and Brian had mentioned, it's just like the broader access to other universities and how they tackle similar problems. It's just very nice to basically, I guess you get like a phone a friend, is that you know that there's someone out there that will be able to help you, that there's probably facing similar problems. And if they haven't already created a solution, they're going to be able to help you with it. They might even just be able to, willing to help you tackle your solution as well. Also, again, I'm probably going to be stressing it through the entire thing, but through the mentoring program and the various community groups, I've gotten a lot more confident in my areas of expertise and just overall growth in my personal and professional development, which I feel like has definitely contributed to the security teams as a whole as well.
Great, all good stuff. And over to you, Zarmina, for your perspective.
So again, a lot like Ashley said, it's great to be able to check your work and sort of set a standard or set a bar for yourself. and just make sure that you're on par with your peer institutions, right? We get told to not reinvent the wheel a lot. We don't always get told how, but having community really helps with that. And one of the things that I noticed through working groups and other things was that I was less and less afraid to speak or ask questions. And again, I think that our university was better for it, and our security awareness program was better for it, because I was making sure that I was asking the questions that I actually had, or that I was sharing ideas wherever I was able to help other people as well. So yeah, that confidence piece is a big one, Ashley.
It is, and we'll finish with Cheryl, and I think Cheryl, you mentioned many years. I don't want to say how many, but how does that comfort you over the years? All those things you've brought back, but just to sort of summarize that and your experience would be great.
Well, I actually strongly share Ashley and Zarmina's opinion and thoughts on one of the benefits, or several of the benefits that we derive from our engagements. I would add to this laundry list this ability to think strategically about how to develop and, again, sustain security programs. I don't know if I could have done what I've been able to accomplish without this community in place to bounce ideas off of. And I love this phrase, not reinventing the wheel, but not quite knowing how that wheel is supposed to turn for my particular culture and my particular institution. So using the community and my network to actively engage, maybe sometimes even debate, strategies or tactics have been extraordinarily beneficial to me in my growth. And I dare say that even though I've spent a lot of years at this, the years are not over. I don't have all the answers yet. And I'm still actively involved in the community so that I can acquire more answers to questions that emerge almost every single day.
And we just had a question come in on chat that's sort of on the community groups and community activities. We've been very focused on the cybersecurity and privacy communities. The question in chat was about I'm going to expand it out to be more general, but the question was, well, not security specific, what communities would you recommend for system administrators? So there's system administrators, of course, are very welcome within to ask questions around security because they're very involved and critical to sort of the day-to-day security operations. But there are other groups at EDUCAUSE where system administrators can get involved. There's other groups in Internet 2 around the cloud or network, depending on your role, that you can get involved. And at the REN-ISAC, there's the, Kim, correct me, I'm trying to remember, what's the enterprise participation, where if you have would like to be involved in the security community, that way you can. But there are a number of other avenues for engagement in the three organizations for the broader higher ed IT community. Anybody have anything to add on that?
Well, I think also it may also help to look closer to home as far as system admins. Not sure about your campus. Our campus does have like a couple of designated interest groups. I think there's at least one that's specifically for Mac OSs in general, where it's just like people on the campus that are just interested in the Mac OS. So they will meet and discuss any issues they're having as well. It's not even just for sysadmins. So I would think about looking on your campus as well. And if there isn't already something already on your campus, look into creating one.
Thanks, Ashley. Over to you, Kim.
Okay, thank you. Well, Nick asked about what you get out of it. Brian asked about what your organization gets out of it. And so this is kind of a framing around the common good or the community. What do you see as something the community can address better than an individual campus might be able to address? So Zarmina, I'm going to start with you.
So there's two things I would like to bring to everyone's attention with that, because there's smaller institutions, there's larger institutions, there's institutions and communities that may look the same, and there are institutions and communities that are very diverse. And so one of those things I would say is diversity. And being parts of these types of conferences and these types of communities really helps to touch on ideas and things that you can take home to maybe a smaller institution or a more rural institution or wherever people may not be thinking about those things as priorities. So that's one thing. And just resources, right? Regardless of the size of an institution, we don't always know how well resourced their security team is. I mean, not to give away too many secrets, but at GW, the security team was in not the basement level 1, but basement level 2. So of the tech building that we were in. So just having said that, you know, regardless of the size or the scale of your institution, you might need help getting creative and finding ideas as well. So I think that as an industry, of course, we can always do more, but those are two things that I think are really helped by communities like this one.
Great, thank you. Ashley, do you have anything to put it in here?
Yes, just really anything that's affecting more than one university. So just examples like such as handling specific cyber attacks that are only targeting higher ed institutions, higher education resources, ones that are created by higher education security professionals for higher education security professionals. So for example, the HECFAT, which is a vendor assessment tool that's used when you're evaluating third-party vendors for purchasing from the security perspective. And there's a couple of other things as well, just like a pool of resources that other people in the community have already put together. So you do not, as Zarmina mentioned earlier, you don't have to actually just reinvent the wheel. You can just take that and apply it to your university.
Thank you. Mike.
So getting involved with some of those working groups sometimes can lead to writing some standards that then a lot of the schools can then use. I know some examples over the years, like there's been a lot of schemas that almost every higher ed school uses, like EDU person in your LDAP. And a lot of that was brought together by the community, getting together all this, a bunch of schools, hammering that out and kind of developing that standard so other schools can use that and then communicate with each other, kind of using that common language. So that's, you know, things like that are definitely something that you can only accomplish as a community rather than individual.
I love it. Thank you. Cheryl, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to get maybe a little bit more tactical in response to this question. First, let me applaud the community for a lot of the great work that it is doing across the board, from policy to advocacy, et cetera. One area that I'd love to see more strength is in engagements with vendors. Again, just getting real tactical here for a second. I know that both I2 and EDUCAUSE, and even I dare say REN, are all collectively working towards how we can do better together. I just want to see us do more better together, if that makes any sense to all of you. I think each of us, no matter what size of an institution you represent, are all struggling with the same issues when it comes to engagement with vendors. And we go through the same exercise, each of us in turn, using almost the same instrument. And you keep using that word same enough, and you wonder whether or not there's some way for collaboration to take root as opposed to repetition time and time again. So as I said, my response is a bit more tactical, but it's a pain point for me. And I would suggest it may be a pain point for everyone else. And that is, we're engaging more and more with these third parties. We really do need to work more closely together.
I agree with that. I've seen that need. It started whenever, a long time ago, but now it's really grown and changed. And the community, we see that even in the questions and the answers and the responses to each other in our different forums. So yeah, what can we do? What's the next step, and how do we help to evolve the community in the right direction? With that, I think it's back over to Brian.
Thanks, Kim. It's great. I'm thinking as we're talking, and I'm dropping links in, I'm reading the Q&A. So it's great that there's so many of us, because we can multitask while we're moderating this. So, sort of in the spirit, the next question is around what do you think EDUCAUSE and the REN-ISAC could do to make it easier for new, and I'll stress new, or returning people to get involved in the community? And I stress because many of us are old, right? So how do we bring young professionals into the community? How do we have an orientation, right? I wasn't looking at you, Kim. I'm looking at myself, right? So both keeping the current community engaged, but also bringing the next generation in. So sort of throwing a little curveball in the question, but I think you guys will do fine with that. And I think, Mike, you're up first to answer this one.
So there is a in-common Internet 2 conference that's been happening for quite some time called CAMP, and then they have an advanced camp. And there's a whole lot of topics around there. It's not just identity and access management. It touches upon security. It also will touch upon some of their specific IAM products that they have, but they have things that are more generic that, when you're talking about SSO and some of the different solutions that might come into play. And it's really, a lot of the topics are community driven. They put out, like every other conference, they put out calls for papers, and a number of schools generally get together and collaborate. So about, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, they took that idea and created something called Basecamp. And that's designed for exactly this type of case for someone new or returning. And they do a really good job of kind of giving you a high level of, this is why identity and access management is important. Here's like a general architectural view of what you should be looking at. And they like to do a fun thing with titles. So they'll show like all the different titles of all the folks that attend, and it really runs the whole entire spectrum. And they even get vendors in there that are just really interested in better engaging with a lot of the higher ed community. So they'll attend, so they get some extra background and everything. So I think that's been such a wonderful thing that they've developed. And there's enough in there that even if you are familiar and you are experienced, you can still go and network and still learn something that you might not have known before. And I guess one of the things that I'm not sure about, and I'll kind of throw the question back to the moderators maybe. I don't know if there's a similar idea of this kind of base camp-ish thing for the larger security community, because I think that would be great to develop something like that if it doesn't already exist. Because like I said, every new person that I will hire from now on, that's going to be like step one. I'm going to send them there just so they get a good background. And then they so many other schools attend, it's right off the bat, they'll make contacts, they'll make friends, and be able to kind of use those relationships as they continue. So
excellent. I think you just set us on a path for taking this orientation concept to a new level. So thanks for that. And we'll jump over to Cheryl for her thoughts.
Well, let me begin by saying, Mike, that's a fantastic idea. And so I just made a note, Basecamp. Let me pick up on that and also suggest that we do more to advertise our working groups. So much of my development started by participating actively in a variety of working groups. And I know that they're published on the website, but maybe we could do just a tad bit more to let people know that these groups are open to all comers. You don't have to be an expert to engage in the conversation. And I think that that's also another point we want to make with regard to the working groups. Sometimes it may feel like it's a club, and it's really not. It's an opportunity to start building your network and building your community. And so I think I might, pivot a little bit and emphasize maybe something that already exists, and that is these working groups and making them more accessible, making people aware that they are, available to them to engage.
Thanks, Cheryl. That's a great point. I think we've been thinking at EDUCAUSE a lot about that. We do, when we advertise, we're only sort of advertising or promoting to an audience that's already listening, right? And we need to reach those audiences that might not be familiar with these three communities in a way. So I think that's a great takeaway, at least for me, and I think Nick and Kim as well. So thank you for that. And going over to Zarmina next, right?
Sure, I guess. So one of the things that I can definitely say is that if and when the conference, the security professionals and the CPPC conference from EDUCAUSE is back in person, I would definitely recommend that if there's a place and time where the world is normalized enough that people can meet in person again, or wherever, if you can meet virtually, as Mike mentioned as well. I feel like I can't stress community enough. Like, because of that one conference, I now have people that I can probably call in the middle of the night if I need an answer to something, or if I need a mentorship question answered, or whatever the case is, if I need a sounding board. So the importance of networking and building your community is something that we're all harping on. And I really hope that the value of what we're saying is not lost, because you will always have someone to brainstorm with. You'll have someone to critique you. You'll have someone to commiserate with. You'll have probably all of the things that you can desire as far as like a professional community goes. And yeah, I guess that's my answer.
And we'll finish up with Ashley on this round of question. This question round. It's Final Jeopardy.
Yeah, echoing what some of the others have been saying, just spreading the word on the three communities as a whole in general. Before, one of the previous CISOs that I had worked under had mentioned the organizations. I had no idea that they existed. I really like the idea of the overall EDUCAUSE ambassador role, where there's a designated person on campus that dedicates their time to learning about higher education resources. So I'm wondering if there's a way for us to get like unofficial, official security and privacy focused version of that.
I'm just taking a note on that because that's a really good idea.
On to the next question, right, Nick?
Looks like it's back to me.
Yeah.
So shifting gears a little bit, a few of you raised inclusiveness, accessibility in your different responses. So let's dive in on that a little bit. Are there areas of improvement we as a community can make to create a stronger and more inclusive community? Cheryl, I'd like to start with you, please.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's improvement that all of us can make. So let me not just pick on this topic and this forum. I'll look at inclusivity in two different veins. One is just bringing newer people who have not been exposed to, say, cybersecurity into the fold. And we've talked about a number of strategies that we can take. More awareness, openness, ensuring that we have orientation programs. I love the base camp-like idea. So on that front, we've talked about, I think, some great ideas. The other vein that I would examine inclusivity through is through diversity, equity, and inclusion, and suggesting very strongly that all of these communities, EDUCAUSE, I2, and REN, partner with some of the existing forums and groups that have talked and are talking extensively, strategically, that is to say, around diversity, equity, and inclusion. There are some fantastic ideas already being created and floating around. What I'm not seeing and hearing, and I'll again be very direct and honest, is each of these various groups picking up some of those ideas and running with them, moving forward, trying them out. In fact, I once chaired the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Advisory Committee for EDUCAUSE. We were relatively new. It's been around for a couple of years now, and I'm fairly certain to say that they've come up with a number of different fantastic strategies and tactics that all of us can use. I would also suggest that each of our universities is embracing this concept and idea. We are all individually coming up with thoughts and ideas on how we might open our community. Once again, we don't have to invent the wheel on this one. We just need to engage and talk to one another about how we can open up our doors and make ourselves more inclusive to all.
Great. Thank you. Sarmina.
I would echo what Cheryl's saying, and I just want to remind everyone that when we talk about inclusivity, we're not just talking about race. That includes ages, that includes neurodivergence, it includes genders and all of the above, right? So I think that every organization is made great by understanding different perspectives and different approaches, and to definitely keep that in mind. But yeah, I don't want to sound like a broken record, so that's my spiel.
Thank you. And Ashley?
Echoing how I answered the last question, again, just more spreading the word of how EDUCAUSE and REN-ISAC and Internet 2 work, that they're available for resources, maybe sending information about the community to groups that are more historically underrepresented, such as various women in tech groups. Also emphasize using inclusive language while you're presenting or submitting a blog post or just all around talking in the community as well.
Thank you. Nick, back to you.
I was just trying to get the REN-ISAC guide for the inclusive language put into chat. Let me just put that link into chat.
Yeah, I actually did a nice segue to that. So thank you.
That's right. Perfect. And so the next question we have is a question from one of the registrants. And the question was, my main concern is being a small college. We do not have the resources for a dedicated security person. Most of the responsibilities fall on me as the CIO. I wonder if I should contract out those services. I feel prepared, but maybe my feelings are not sufficient. And so this kind of goes on touches on some of the comments in chat around that Brian shared around the which one was that? For the resources for the I lost the resource. Sorry, I'll find it and put it. But so the question was, thank you, on the budget conscious information security resources. Thank you. And so the core though of that question is, how do you get involved, and what could a institution with less than an FTE devoted to information security do? I've talked with a number of campuses over the last 6 months or so where they have like 0.1 of an FTE assigned to information security. And so that's a whole different realm than what I'm used to. And so it's been absolutely enlightening to me to hear that point of view. And so we'll go and ask our panelists about their comments on this. So Zarmina, any comments on this question?
Sorry, my internet is lagging a little bit, so I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
But so I would just start off with saying that one of the things I've learned through some of these awesome communities we've mentioned is that if you have a feeling, it's usually not a feeling, it's usually an instinct. And if you're good at your job, which you should be able to validate within these communities, you probably have a good security instinct, or you have probably a good instinct to make moves on whatever you believe is right for the team, number one. And I would say that going back to having less than one full-time employee dedicated to security, if you're not engaging in communities, you're bound to feel isolated. You're bound to kind of spiral or tailspin. But if you have other people helping you come up with ideas that are both creative and cost effective, which a lot of these groups really do. Like one of the things that we used to talk about and joke about was taking Swedish fish to like a lunch and learn if we're teaching about fishing or something like that. It's just really small things that you can do to engage people and help them to prioritize security as you would want it to be prioritized. So it's just like a small suggestion from my end.
Thanks, Zarmina. Cheryl, do you have anything to add?
Certainly want to echo Zarmina's points. The community is going to be your sounding board when you are scoped in that manner. You're small in essence, but maybe give you some encouragement. I work for a large university. We're extraordinarily large. We're very diverse. By all accounts, one might suggest that I have a reasonably decent sized team, but I too don't have enough resources. I don't think any of us can raise our hands and say we have enough. And so I think that that's always going to be an ongoing challenge for many of us in this space. Is we just don't have enough people or resources to go around, regardless of what percentage of our time we devote to security. To that point, what I would do is essentially what Zarmina has said, is build that community, build that network, and more importantly, prioritize the work that needs to be done in consultation with campus leadership or university stakeholders. And just realize that we are human. There is only so much that we can do as one or as point one. I too do outsource some of my services because I need, one, the expertise, and I need to get the job done. So I wouldn't hesitate to leverage external resources. And sometimes those resources are not just hiring another company, but rather calling a friend or an associate or a partner at a different institution. I think Ashley said this as well in an earlier statement, that as part of that community that we're talking about, that network, you have partners out there who can step in and help. The REN in particular, if I have a really serious security or technical challenge, I post. And by the time the day is over, I have not one, not two, but a zillion responses, because chances are someone has already grappled with the same problem. So the size is important. It's an issue. I get it. I experience it too, even though I'm large, right? But I think tactically and strategically through our community, we can work our way through a lot of these problems. And yes, I will outsource when I have to.
Thanks, Cheryl. Mike, do you have anything to add?
So I would, this might not be practical in all the situations, but if it's a particular security related project, what we've done in the past is we do our best to sort of share resources. So without having a lot of FTEs devoted, but we have a specific project, and then you kind of almost develop sort of a pseudo team that you can kind of do small little chunks here and there and bounce ideas. So it's almost kind of like creating your own strategy group within your available resources, which won't always be practical, but in some cases that might help. And then I can give a quick plug, although it's cost money, but Gartner has a program, GTP, Gartner for Technical Professionals, and it's kind of very much what Cheryl was talking about, in sort of like a phone a friend kind of thing. Like they obviously Gartner, they publish a lot of research and a lot of documents that you can use for reference. But then part of this GTP program, you can set up an hour-long meeting with one of the Gartner folks in whatever area you need, and talk to them. You can submit them like a 20-page, it's either up to 10 or up to 20 pages per hour, for them to sort of review, like architectural diagrams, ideas, policies, anything like that. So something like that you can leverage.
Excellent. Thanks, Mike. And so to go extend on what you were saying around the community engagement aspect, something that Brian reminded me about. So I host a number of community calls around specific cloud services or vendors. And one of the calls that I have is for the Net Plus Duo program, where campuses can come on a monthly basis. You show up and you can ask your question and get that real-time feedback. So you have a question, like one of the perennial questions is, how do we distribute tokens? And so you can go and ask your peers. There's anywhere from 60 to 100 other campuses on these calls, and say, how do you solve this particular problem? And somebody will say, oh, we have our bookstore do it. Oh, we have our help desk do it. Or you'll get like 20 different ideas, ways to potentially solve your challenge that you're looking into in like a minute or 2 minutes time. Yeah, it's a lot of information to potentially go through, but that could give you the a whole host of different options that you can go look into and trying to figure out what best fits my campus and how we work and the solution that we're trying to figure out. And so there's sometimes engaging with the community, you can get that real-time feedback and on how to solve your challenges. And that doesn't necessarily need to be it doesn't have to be an extremely long question. You don't need to go into a lot of detail sometimes, because they're your peers. They have been in your shoes before, or in your shoes right now, knowing like what you're working on and what some of the challenges that you've got. And thanks, Brian, for putting the links in the chat. We've got about 8 minutes left, and I know I said it would save a little bit of time for audience QA. We've got a couple other questions for the panel, but let's get up to one of the questions from the QA real quick. And so we'll, if you want to jump in, this is on, thanks, Kurt, for your question. You can start with not a lot of money being spent on working towards raising user awareness. While the vendor-created training programs are great, you can accomplish some of those goals by just creating a dialogue with your users. Seek every opportunity you can to talk about cybersecurity awareness with your users. The more you talk about it, the more awareness your users will have. There's a lot going on in the community around security awareness and sharing what's going on your campus around security awareness. And coming up in just a couple days, Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and a lot of campuses will share what they're doing with their communities as part of their Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And so any comments on how to do that security awareness training on your campus and sharing those results, and how you may have adopted some of the toolkits that are available in the community? Any of the panelists want to jump in on that?
I can start if you would like.
Yeah.
So when I was at GW as a security awareness practitioner, I definitely used toolkits that EDUCAUSE shared, or that the National Cybersecurity Alliance shared, or other organizations have shared, so that we didn't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel for Cybersecurity Awareness Month and other things. But as far as creating a dialogue with your users, I think it's as simple as I think part of the question was also a comment about maybe not having to use vendor provided resources. And so I will say to that like, that's exactly what I had to do in the beginning. Even if it was just creating a monthly cadence of a lunch and learn program or something like that, where you can curate or create your own content. As a security professional, I would encourage everyone to trust that they know what they're talking about, because often I thought I didn't, but I would go in and I would do the research and I would make sure I know exactly what I'm talking about, put together presentations, engage with them in Q&As a lot like this one, so that they understand that we are approachable and that they can ask us any security question that they would need to, and that way we are constantly affecting security posture. I think that it's Also worth noting, though, that who you choose to be that person who liaises between your team and your users is really important. I was really lucky that at GW I came up through from the help desk to desktop support to security. And so I knew a lot of different people. People recognized my face and they could also know that I am a very approachable personality. So I would say that it's a delicate balance, and yeah, just keep all of that in mind.
Thanks, Armina. Any other?
Yeah, I would certainly echo all of Zarmina's points. Followed the same path and still am following that same path in my current role. One additional tidbit or maybe a piece of advice is if you do have a team or other individuals who are directly or indirectly part of your team, and I mean that correctly, and that is not everyone who's part of the security world works in the security office. There are, believe it or not, advocates all across your university. You just have to find them and then mentor them or support them in their advocacy of cybersecurity. And so I would take that tactic as well, is to find those people who are passionate about this field and do what you can to help support them in their growth and their advocacy in their local community. The other piece of advice I would give is if you do have staff, then make it part of their job as well. It's not just the CISO who needs to and should be the only face of cybersecurity. If you add more people to that play, if you will, then over time, culturally, the institution will see that we're all part of this camp. It's not just that that CISO or that security officer who's the champion of this particular important cause. And I think that too would help build awareness over time. And I really appreciate this question because it is truly spot on. And as we're building a culture.
Thanks, Cheryl. Any final comments on that question? Because as I think about it, what Zarmina and Cheryl mentioned, like I've been at several campuses prior to Internet 2, and it was, I think of cybersecurity and privacy as a team sport. There are many people that I've worked with across campus that are very, that want to be involved in how information security risk management is and governance is handled across the institution, because it's part of the overall risk management, it's part of legal requirements, and it is pervasive throughout the community, whether that's your IRB, your general counsel, your risk management, the people that handle your insurance, and the list goes on. Any other comments from the group on that?
Can I add one thing?
Of course.
I would say even if you don't have a formal security champions program, as Cheryl mentioned, there are security advocates and champions all over. And we all have to find them, as I did when I was at GW as well, because you really can't do it by yourself. You can't clone yourself, not that I know of quite yet. So it really helps to know who to go to be, in the different departments, in HR or in student engagement or student housing or wherever you are. So yeah, just be aware of that. You don't have to have a formal champions program to have champions. You all have them.
Thanks, Armina. Any final comments on this? Or any final comments before we close in the last minute?
I would just kind of echo one of the first things that was said before we started, that everyone that's part of this higher ed community or works with higher ed, you're not alone. We're all dealing with the same issues, the same problems, and we're all here to support each other.
Thanks, Mike. That is a really great sort of comment to wrap us up and transition us. I'd like to thank our my co-moderators, Brian and Kim, our panelists today, Ashley, Mike, Cheryl, and Zarmina, for participating on this really exciting panel. We'll be sharing the recording after the panel today, and a follow-up blog with links to some additional information that we've talked about during this panel. So thank you everyone for your time this month, and I'm looking forward to a great Cybersecurity Awareness Month in October. Thank you, everyone.